Come on, bitch, let's go. Come on, get ready, bitches. You haven't seen nothing yet. Come on.
Valentino, Versace, Lamborghini, Bugatti. I got money to burn. I'm single and I'm naughty.
Come on.
Tiffany's, Cartier, Gucci on Marty.
Come on.
Break out your black card, boys. It's time to party.
All right, you guys. So I thought we would start today's show with Hollywood Demons, episode 4. Now, I haven't been covering this because some of the content I've already done in the Patreon, so I don't want to repeat it. But today I thought I might discuss, of course, in particular, the episode that featured Taylor Armstrong from season 1 through 3. Of the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, of course. And of course, I'm invested in this because these were the seasons that I was on. One as Taylor's friend doing her events and stuff on the show. The second one is a friend of cast member. And the third of it is what they call a guest star. Okay, so it's like they have all these names for everything and you get paid accordingly. But anyway, the point is that I thought it would be really fun to see how they talked about this and how she talked about this to see if I agree with it or not. And you're going to be really shocked with some of the tea I spill about what was going on in the time versus what is being said on Hollywood Demons episode 4. It is going to be well worth it. And unfortunately, I'm going to be putting most of that in the Patreon. However, I hope you join. It's $6 a month. It's really the only support I have in doing my content. And so I would really appreciate if you can do it to join. I do tons of content. You get loads of tea and receipts. There's wonderful people in the Patreon, lots of influencers and journalists and everything else. So it's a fun crew and you can join the conversation. And we have a chat that's always going where people are posting gossip and it's really fun. So that's my pitch. Now, before we get into it, I did want to spill a little Real Housewives of New Jersey tea. I wanted you guys to know that Teresa Giudice has been filming a show in Miami, working title name members only, and she's been with some of the Married with Medicine women filming this production. So I thought you would find that kind of a interesting twist in everything going on right now. Receipts on this are in the Patreon chat with more detail for Dishing Drama Dana. You guys all know she wants to move to Florida at the first available moment. She was looking at California and then shifted gears to Florida. She's just waiting for her youngest daughter to get through high school, and then she's out the door. Now, I wanted you to know this because now Gia's working, she's working. We got a lot of Giudice women making things happen at this point. Teresa, as you will see, comes up in the Hollywood Demons episode that I'm covering that also discusses Taylor Armstrong and Russell Armstrong's scandal. So I thought I'd bring this gossip into today's show. Also, did you guys hear that Bo Dietl's been implicated in another problem? Let me read it to you. This is from the Daily News. This was just a few days ago. Bo Dietl interviewed by feds amid probe into ex-Adams advisor Tim Pearson. Bo Dietl, a private security contractor and ex-NYPD detective, was interviewed by federal investigators as part of a corruption investigation scrutinizing Tim Pearson, a former top advisor to the mayor, the Daily News has learned. Sources familiar with the interview confirmed that Dietl spoke with the investigators, but it was unclear when the sit-down occurred or what the status of the investigation is currently, given leadership changes in the Manhattan U.S. Attorney's Office, which has led the probe. Dietl, a longtime friend of Adams, who has more recently voiced criticism of the mayor amid his legal troubles, declined to comment on or confirm the meeting, citing legal reasons. Manhattan U.S. Attorney Office spokesperson Nicholas Bias also declined to comment. Look how powerful Bo Dietl's connections are. And then look at the fact that Louis Ruelas was working with Bo Dietl and their stories didn't match in their involvement with each other. I just feel like this is another example where Louis Ruelas was working with someone who had relationships at the utmost level of government office, including Justice Department level contacts. And it may explain a lot of questions people have had for years, which is with all of the probes in businesses related to Louis Ruelas and his associates by the FTC and him being such a public figure, why nothing has ever happened to him, considering he was involved with businesses that were doing things similar to Jen Shah. You're going to hear about that more in today's episode. And this is important because it's a confirmation that Dietl is in with these people in a level that's quite unusual for a private investigator, right? And is he getting favors? Are there like trades happening? Is he able to get clients out of trouble if he's got these types of connections? I'm just saying, it's not so far-fetched anymore, is it? Looks like Dietl's throwing Adams under the bus because maybe Adams didn't do something that he was supposed to, is all I'm saying. Listen to this. Without going into any names, Dietl said in a podcast, so he goes on a public platform, that he was told by some of the mayor's, quote, people to submit a bid for migrant shelter security contract, quote, at 3 times the going rate, with the understanding he'd then have to pay 20% of the deal total to a private consulting firm. Reached by phone last week, Dietl declined to name the person he alleges told him that, saying he couldn't do so, again for, quote, legal reasons. Sounds like he's going to be selling information maybe to the feds to help take Adams out. Very unusual of Bo Dietl being a whistleblower, right? Just saying. People came to me from the mayor's office and wanted me to bid 3 times the going rate and then the 20% for the consulting firm. And I told them to get the F out of my office, Dietl told the news, noting that was being proposed sounded like a kickback scheme. Right. This is the guy who bugged a lawyer's house and put like devices on his computers and everything to get information to use against him somehow. And you know, that's still in process. This guy's suddenly got a huge conscience. Specifically, Dietl said he was told to charge $119 or so per hour for security guards at the shelter, far more than his usual $38 rate. They then wanted 20% of the total to go to a consulting company, he said, adding he couldn't name the company either for legal reasons. Sounds like he's talking to the prosecutor's office. This is all still something I can't comment on, he said. A 2024 audit of Adams' administration's migrant crisis response conducted by City Controller Brad Lander's office found private security contractors working at migrant shelters have charged the city $117 per hour. On Monday, Adams spokeswoman Kayla Mamalik noted that Pearson no longer works for the mayor's administration and that Dietl never got a migrant-related contract with the city. So why is he lying? Or isn't he? She also said the administration has always remained dedicated to being fiscally responsible with taxpayers' dollars and argue any insinuations otherwise is baseless and false. Sounds like there's some retribution being done by multiple parties against each other, all of which are corrupt. Pearson, a former cop who served as Adams' top public security advisor and has known him for decades, was heavily involved in awarding migrant service contracts while in the mayor's administration. His home was raided last fall as part of a corruption investigation scrutinizing city contracts and kickbacks. The news has previously reported. He has not been charged with any crimes. Pearson, who resigned in October after the raid, delayed the award of a Brooklyn migrant shelter contract in 2023 in an effort to get Dietl a security subcontract at the site, Politico reported last year. Besides the federal probe, Pearson was hit with multiple lawsuits alleging sexual harassment, professional retaliation, and assault while in Adams' administration. One of those suits claims Pearson once complained he was making enough money off of migrant contracts he was awarded, allegedly telling subordinates, "Where are the crumbs?" Whether the probe involving Pearson is still active is unclear following a shakeup in leadership at the Manhattan U.S. Attorney's Office provoked by the Trump administration's intervention in the corruption case against Adams, which was born from a series of investigations overseen by the office former head Damian Williams. The fate is also uncertain of multiple other Manhattan U.S. Attorney corruption probes that last year ensnarled various top Adam aides, including ex-NYPD Commissioner Edward Caban, Deputy Mayor for Public Safety Phil Banks, Schools Chancellor David Banks, and First Deputy Mayor Sheena Wright. Oh, there was more, by the way. This is like behind now. I got sent another thing about like more corruption in New York. New York is just a cluster. It's a freaking travesty. what's happening in New York. In response to the demand to stop prosecuting Adams, top officials in the prestigious Manhattan office resigned in protest, including acting U.S. Attorney Daniel Sassoon, who wrote in a letter, "The dismissal of the mayor's case amounted to quid pro quo." Did you hear that? Quid pro quo. This for that in Latin, in which he would assist the president's deportation agenda in exchange for legal reprieve. So Dietl is now sitting down with the feds and he's acting as a whistleblower on kickback schemes he was privy to in the Adams administration with people he was working with. Okay, but it sounds like to me, I mean, I'm just a layperson. Everybody's on the take in this administration that's in New York right now. And there is a ton of quid pro quo happening here. And it seems like that is the currency of the New York government at the moment. And considering that the Southern District of New York is the most lethal prosecutor's office in the country, where are they in all this? Where are they? I mean, aren't we all supposed to be held at the same level of accountability in this country, rich, poor, or middle class? Give me a freaking break. I think now politics are going to attract people who want ultimate power and to get away with things because it seems like they're the only ones who do. Not even billionaires are getting away with this kind of thing anymore. In the past, they used to, but nope, because politics has weaponized things that take them out. And we've seen it time and time again. I can't get over some of the cases people are being found guilty in that are entrepreneurial, where huge companies with giant legal departments are being like, oh, we were defrauded, we were this. Yeah, you were defrauded with your 30 attorneys doing due diligence on these big companies for years before you acquired them for huge amounts of money and then benefited in your stock when you pumped it and you told everybody about these unbelievable acquisitions. And then you're like, oh shit, sorry, it wasn't what we thought it was. And so now we're going to let the Justice Department put these people in jail for 20 years. But, you know, we did our due diligence, but we were fooled. Give me a break. All this after these big companies have already collected damages and the insurance, getting all the money back that they spent on acquiring these companies and also getting restitution that they're getting all the assets of the companies that they invested in and they're saying thieved from them. It's such a win-win for them, you know, and who bears the brunt of it? The stockholder, the shareholder, who believed in the Wizard of Oz because the investment bankers told them to. That's as true as Bo Dietl being a whistleblower. But that is not the type of show I do. So we will move on, my friends, and we will just pretend that everything is done properly by all people and there is no corruption in the world and get back to Hollywood Demons. It's just, the first part of the show is just them talking about all the different Real Housewives franchises that exist on this show. There's so many, and there's now international versions of it, and it's like told from the Bravo fan perspective. And then it jumps to Ronald Richards, which made me laugh. I know Ronald, and Ronald is like, you know, nothing you see on this show is real. It's all BS. It's the same formula. You know, he's got the darker view. Now, the reason he's on this is not for what you think. You think he's on it because of his, you know, commentary on X to do with Erica Jane Girardi and legal problems maybe to do with the occasional reality star that appears on some of Bravo's more popular shows, which Ronald got into a few years ago. But no, that is not why Ronald is on this show. Ronald is on the show because he was Russell Armstrong's attorney. And in fact, if you go in the Patreon and you search his name, you will find that I did an interview with Ronald Richards, and we spent a large percentage of the interview talking about Taylor Armstrong and Russell Armstrong and the fact that he represented them in the divorce, or Russell in the divorce. And we get into me like kind of grilling him a little about this, okay? So if you haven't heard that episode, but you're enjoying me talking about this today, you should definitely go listen to that, okay? Because there's stuff that he said in the Patreon that wasn't really said elsewhere. So then we see Dr. Drew going through and talking about how Bravo is doing their shows. He says, look, there's a network and then there's a production company that really creates the show in the sense of how the fans see it and cast it, and then there's the cast members. And the production company sits in between the cast members and the network. He said that some of the scenes that he watched of Housewives made his skin crawl. You know, he was like really disgusted in a way by what he was watching. Also, it jumps to a scene and we see Gina Keogh, and she's in telling the origin story of Real Housewives of Orange County, which she's done a few times with Scott Dunlop. And there's also an episode and a YouTube video with me and her talking about similar topics if you want to go listen to those, because I know the deep dive. So we went into some depth on her life, which for some reason they don't do that often. I want to say that what really was ironic to me is that Dr. Drew was doing this show, okay? Because Dr. Drew was on a reality show called Celebrity Rehab, and his show had a huge amount of scandals. I, in fact, did an entire episode on Dishing Drama Dana to do with his reality show's scandals, okay? So the fact that he's the one commentating on this Hollywood Demon show, I'm like, where's your episode? So he goes and he's, Housewives, this, that, whatever. And then we hear Bravo's origin story of being like a highbrow artsy network. And the take of the writer is that no one liked it or watched it. That's not totally true, but it had a very different audience in the beginning. And then they started to dip their feet into doing host-driven before and after glow-up shows, and that worked for them. Of course, Queer Eye for the Straight Guy comes up. Anyway, it's kind of a lot of blah, blah. But then we get to Dr. Drew, and Drew's like, that when they cast people, they look for people that they think has something unstable about them. And that's why they're looking for those people to be on the show. And that might explain why so many of the people on the show end up having criminal issues. And I was listening to Dr. Drew's conversation about this. And since I've actually been through the casting process all the way to the end where you get the part, I wanted to say that he's not totally wrong, because they definitely ask you when you're going through the casting process at the last step, not the early steps, but the last step when they're pretty sure they want you. They do ask you about like your childhood trauma, or they might ask you like, do you have anything sort of unusual about you that maybe you want to tell us? Or is there anything you want to let us know about like your family life or whatever it might be? And it does trigger a lot of people to kind of break down and tell them like their deepest, darkest secret or something that they've been through. And that is usually the one thing that like puts you over the edge, that gets you the gig, right? I think changing that a little bit now. I think they're also looking at people's following that exists before they go on a show. They like the unknowns, but they are now looking for more people that are established in their own right as personalities, which was not the way they used to do it. So before, they really looked for your money, for your lifestyle, for like if you were a little weird or not, or something unusual about you. Obviously, they're also casting for like a hole for you to fill, and they have something in mind. They definitely want it, like I said, know your secrets or trauma so that they can build something around it. And they do the casting in a really strange way at the end. You're like in a dark room, there's a light on you. They're kind of testing if you can handle being on camera and still acting like yourself in a weird environment. But usually that's when they ask you sort of the deep, dark secret questions, and maybe that environment also makes you want to tell them. Remember those interrogations they used to do in the old days where they'd have like a light on you and you'd be in the dark and they'd ask you questions? Kind of like that. And just when I'm thinking this is going to be kind of like a lot of the shows they do about housewives, it shifted. It was good. And they brought in people who had relationships with housewives, like Danielle Staub's ex, who has gone on YouTube several times to tell his story about how she's horrific and all these things. I did several shows with Danielle Staub. I have a different take on kind of Danielle. Obviously, when she was young, she fell into a bad situation in a bad way, and she's done nothing but her whole life now, like fix that. And people love to focus on this one thing because she was a violent criminal at one point, but it doesn't mean that you're always a violent criminal. She has 2 daughters who she adores, and she, is doing yoga and new age shit now, and she's trying to be peaceful, and she could have gone back into the housewives landscape, and she did for a little while just to kind of clear the air and tell everybody what happened to her and how traumatic she found housewives What does that tell you? That, I think it's a little unfair to keep revisiting this, but we will for the sake of the show today. So the big Hollywood demons angle here is that Bravo starts to look for criminals to bring in and cast for the shows. I mean, I don't know. That's a bit of a stretch. I think more likely personality types that push the limits, take chances. There might be a little bit of a chip broken or some sort of massive trauma that causes them to do something wrong. I mean, there's definitely behavioral patterns with that. And each year they went for more and more dramatic women, which of course could also turn that out, that kind of result for the person down the line in their life. So they anchor the success of Real Housewives of Orange County in a scene that Tamra Judge has with her then husband at the time, where he's like, I don't know who you are anymore, because now she's famous and on TV. And Tamra Judge says, that's it. I can't stand you. I want a divorce. And that scene was so incredible because she actually did it on TV that people really got addicted to Real Housewives of Orange County, and this took the ratings to a whole new level. This is per this show. I mean, I've heard different renditions of, what made Bravo on certain franchises jump, but in this particular show, Hollywood Demons, Tamra Judge's saying that she wants a divorce was what did it for that franchise. Then what happens after that is they have another girl whose name is Lori Peterson, and she comes on the show and they feature her as a bullied secretary, as a woman who's lost all of her money in a divorce, who has children that are struggling with different issues. One has a heroin addiction, and they start to focus on her in this way. And during filming, her son gets arrested for heroin, and she's really having a tough go of it. Now, they don't really focus too much on the next phase of her life, which was that she ended up marrying a very wealthy man, and things sort of, I guess, corrected themselves with her. But what they say is she was smart enough to know that she needed to focus on her family and life and not be a Bravo celebrity anymore, because otherwise her kid may end up dead, that, her life might implode. She needed to get herself safe and not just be floundering around doing reality TV and having them bank off her tragedy, in other words. Sadly, Lori's son, Josh, did end up succumbing to drugs and died at 35 years old because of fentanyl that was found in his drugs, which poisoned him to death. All right, let's listen to. For the full scoop, join the Dishing Drama Dana Patreon. The link is in this audio description. It's only $6 a month, and you'll get the best information and tea about the things you care about, and even the things you don't know you care about. What are you waiting for?